this is your same house that we were in a couple years ago in
Yes.
California.
Yeah. Same
Nice.
spot. Despite everybody leaving for Austin or whatever they moved to.
Right.
Um, if there's less people here, great. In LA,
Right.
there's too many people in California.
Dude, Austin is crazy, man. I feel like all the tech bros from San Francisco moved to Austin, and then like now a bunch of more creative people are also moving there. It's really like blown up right now.
Yeah, I think it's a nice alternative to just the Silicon Valley epicenter for everything.
Right.
It's good to have some other mini Silicon Valleys, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I also remember when I was at the same house that you're recording this in a couple years ago. I just remember I really liked it because you're close. Obviously, you're still in LA proper, so you can get around places, but you're so far removed from the craziness of Hollywood and North Hollywood and all that stuff. And it's a great place to raise a family. I think your daughter must be like 3 now. Is that right? Or
Yeah, yeah,
nice, nice.
exactly.
Yeah.
I have a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old.
Oh, congrats. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
I just said, why
Also
don't
a
we pile on
daughter?
some more chaos?
Yeah. You're like, I'm not busy enough. Bring it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, yeah, that must have been she was recently had been born, your first daughter, when we were at your place a couple years ago. And I remember you were kind of just like you were just figuring it all out. You were like in the new parent mode and you had your studio downstairs. And I can tell that it's your studio because I feel like there's so much new stuff in there. I don't know, maybe if it's just been reorganized, but like there's a lot of like tech stuff and I feel like you're always tinkering with things like that. So
Yeah, it's been a deep dive, interestingly, with the pandemic, just sort of getting the video side of things, learning more about cameras, how to operate, just getting into like how to do everything manually and not just rely on auto mode to tell the story. So that's been a cool adventure, and learning VJ software like Resolume. So I use that
yeah.
for the visuals and the live stream. So I'm still doing the live stream, drinking a different wine every week we focus
Oh,
on. And
amazing. Amazing.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like do the live mix in one take, and hopefully nothing blows up each week. But usually, you do it one take, no edits, nothing. It's all live every week.
Right. Yeah. How is I was looking at your tour schedule. I mean, it seems like you're fully back in it. Like you're like every weekend playing shows back on the road. So do you feel like, and maybe it's too early to kind of make this comparison, but given everything that's happened in the last, 18 or so months, how are you feeling about getting back on the road, like integrating? So you said you're still doing the live streams. How is it being back? Like what's the same, what's different? Yeah, what's going on in that world for
I
you?
think with live shows, you have to have that to be balanced. You have to have the live presence. For me, it's like that's the reward for the hard work in the studio. Is I mean, some people look at it like a burden to tour, and I love it. The travel can wear on you, but it's a pretty lean operation. I don't have to bring a whole team of people. Like in the past, I've brought a tour manager and a VJ and a photographer, and it's just me. I just fly in, prep and record box, plug in, and it's just gratifying to hear it on a big system. Like it's just
Mm,
not the same hearing music through your sound bar at home or in the kitchen. I mean, that's been a cool angle with the pandemic, doing the live stream, and that people are, dancing in their kitchen, in their living room, and casting the video feed to their TV, which has been really cool. But
right.
but you need bass and you need volume, and you're not going to get that in your house. So that's been really gratifying to get that balance. Is it yin and the yang of studio time? You're either the studio rat or the road dog. Those are the two
Right.
modes,
Right.
and I love both. But if too much of one, too much of a good thing, is too much sometimes.
Right. So you said that now these days you're just traveling by yourself. What was the motivation for trimming it down and making it leaner? Is that
Just
just
costs and
okay?
complexity. And if you look at the bands that are touring right now, if one member of the crew gets COVID, those shows are done for a week
Right.
minimum. They're 2 weeks out, and I've heard of that happening with bands right now, and it's crazy. One person if you have 30 people in your crew in a small touring crew. I mean, I've never had to bring that many people on tour. When we did the 3D walls, we brought um, that was like a semi truck and a bus, and that was like 10 people, I think,
Hmm.
um, for just a little DJ tour. Not like Britney Spears or something.
Right.
so
Right.
so I can't even imagine what it's like to block out a whole a whole tour like that, and then you've got to book everything a year in advance, 6 months minimum for a hard ticket kind of tour. So,
Yep. Yeah, it's I've noticed that I mean you would definitely have a more intimate perspective on this because you're out there touring and I'm sure you're meeting other DJs and all that stuff, but I the perspective that I seem to be getting on through social media and just from talking to people is that the music industry is like and not that we don't need to go down this rabbit hole for sure because it's totally its own rabbit hole, but the music industry seems like understandably so very pro vaccine and like let's just like follow the rules because we otherwise we can't do this and we can't tour and we can't bring you guys these shows. And I just find it very interesting because I was in Tulum, Mexico for 6 months over the pandemic. It was one of the few
wow.
places that never closed down. Like Mexico never had any mandates. There's never anything. Still, it's completely open. No vaccine passport needed. And the reason I went down there is because there was like everyone from Ibiza and Mykonos and all these other cities were in Tulum trying to DJ and throw parties because it was still open. And I just ran into so many people that were like, the masks are bullshit or the vaccine is bullshit. And I have my own views and I've learned to just keep them to myself unless somebody
Yeah.
asks. But like that was the echo chamber there, probably because it was self-selecting for people who weren't scared of COVID, which is why they were going to Tulum. But I've
Right.
noticed that it's interesting. I see all these artists saying like get vaccinated, and it's just interesting. I wonder how much of it is like because do they genuinely believe that, or it's just like we have no alternative because of the mandates and things like that. So
I think it's a pretty minimal sacrifice unless you have like a really bad medical condition. I mean, my view has been I'm vaccinated and I have to be with, my wife was pregnant with our second child, and we were
mm,
like, do we get vaccinated? She's pregnant. Is that risky? And there's, like a lock, the Brazilian DJ, he got COVID, his wife got COVID. They almost lost a baby because of it.
wow.
So it's very clear. Those kind of decisions are very clear. Where
Mm,
if you're healthy, but or if you have something that is compromising your immune system, like you're pregnant, then it was clear what we had to do to get the vaccine early. So,
right.
um, but it was crazy. It was a while before things got settled. We had to wait for hours in line to get the vaccine, and so it was a long process. But it is a little. It is even back on the road. It's scary because I was just in Houston, and they've had their biggest outbreak of COVID ever.
Right.
Not the January spike. So it is far from over, which is still a little scary. And I know people are over it, but the disease is not over people. So I think I'm excited to get the booster shot. I'm ready for it. I wore a mask for a couple of my last shows that were indoors. For like the outdoor Vegas show, I didn't wear a mask. But it's yeah, some people are pissed. Like some fans said, take off your mask, and
Oh, no way.
and I'm like, hey, I have two kids at home that can't be vaccinated. So
Right.
I don't know. My experience though with getting the vaccine was I had no reaction other than a sore arm for the first
Oh,
shot.
wow.
And I've heard of people that have had bad reactions, but every single person I've come into contact with on tour has had COVID. Every single person.
Wow.
It's insane. Absolutely insane. And some people have had it twice.
Yeah.
So the hot spots that were a little scary were Houston and Orlando. And yeah, Orlando was like, yeah, this guy's like, yeah, I know three people that died from it, and I had it twice, and it's Florida, people don't care.
Right. Right. Right.
Uh, so I think the simplest solution right now is like, I think it's good they're being bullish on the vaccine, and of course that's going to piss some people off. But you've got AEG and Live Nation all requiring it. Um, I don't think there's really a good alternative to it, unless you're Joe Rogan and you want a horse
Like take
medication or
ivermectin or
something.
whatever. Yeah. You saw his video that he posted like a couple days ago where he was like,
Yeah,
he just like, yeah, so I just, I was fine, but he like rattles off like 10 drugs that I've like never heard of. Yeah, that was funny.
it doesn't have to be that complicated. Yeah, just but
Right.
it's really interesting how it is. I think the most interesting thing is seeing how it's divided people into different camps and people politicizing it. Even here in LA, when you go
Mm.
into Orange County, I remember I was playing a show at Time in Orange County and Costa Mesa, and they were like, "Oh, you're wearing a mask. You must be from LA."
Oh,
This
wow.
was deep in the pandemic, like judging your values based on your choice to wear a mask. So
Yeah.
that's really weird.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah.
Yeah, how has it been? I mean, so yeah, first of all, we haven't caught up in, and I'll do like an introduction, and talk about like how we met. That'll happen before the show, but yeah, I mean, I'm just really curious to hear how your. I know this is a big question, but just first thing that comes to mind, like, how was the pandemic experience for you in terms of making music and being creative? And do you like, how do you feel now that you're back on tour? Does it feel like just back to business as usual? Does anything feel different? Have you changed your approach to making music or playing music? Yeah, what's that been like getting back on tour?
Back on tour, nothing has changed other than having a little bit of anxiety being that close to people is a little weird,
Right.
after so long where you're with the variant being a threat. So I haven't gotten COVID, thank God. But it's good to be out there. Like it was good to practice every week. I would do the live stream just to make sure I was, you know, feeling a little bit of pressure to do a good mix and and getting those, the 10,000 hours in basically. Like
Yep.
keep flexing that muscle, keep exercising it. Like some DJs just didn't do anything and they didn't have a home setup. And the crazy thing is, I've talked to some people in the pandemic, and I'm like, "What did you do differently? And did you change anything up?" And they're like, "No, I just did the same thing." And that just blows my mind. Like this was dead time, or it could be time to rebuild your brand or your vision or your outlook on life or learn new skills. And I looked at it like, wow, I've got to take advantage of this time. I mean,
Hmm.
besides making babies, I was like,
Right.
let's learn some new skills. And I learned something that I had really no business learning. I mean, learning cinematography, learning video, all the tech behind that. It's just been mind blowing because I've been so focused on like one spoke of the tire, of
Mhm.
the bicycle tire of the wheel, and now I can kind of build the whole wheel, the whole experience, the audio visual experience, and it's so cool. It's like learning how to make stuff look like a movie and make it cinematic and color theory, editing, VJing. There's so
Yeah.
many components, and like audio is just this one little part that's so important. But now it's like I feel like I built these skills where I can go in and then take more direction in music videos,
Mm.
do more with these remote sets. So we did a lot of filming with drones, which is really cool. It seemed like this nerdy thing that I'd sort of never really paid attention to. And then I went to Vermont on a trip, and on a whim, I bought this little mini DJI mini drone, and it was mind blowing. That got me into the whole video thing. So that was like this
Okay.
gateway drug.
Right.
And the whole idea is that you could have the drone film yourself or work with a very small crew, um, and be able to film DJ sets. I mean, the only way to get those shots would be to rent a helicopter or a crane.
Right.
So that was
Right.
really cool to see. Like, it was self empowering to see, like, you could, with some very cheap technology, create a really compelling experience
Mm.
that elevated the music and your brand. So it was cool to experiment with that.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you process that time in that way to learn new skills, because I agree. Like I think a lot of people also just, I think what you said about sort of reorienting your outlook on life and getting into the deeper aspects of analyzing, like, why do I do this, especially if you're a musician and like you're touring a lot and all of a sudden that's taken away from you, looking into other ways that you can satisfy that creative itch. And what's interesting with you in my mind is that you have had already built a very successful career as a musician and a producer and DJ for years and years and years. And one thing I do want to get to during this chat is just longevity and sort of any tips that you have on that, because there are a lot of art aspiring artists and producers that listen to this. um, I'm curious to get your thoughts on, like, when I listen to interviews with artists or podcasts or things like that that are giving advice to aspiring artists, let's say aspiring musicians, I oftentimes hear two seemingly very divergent camps of advice. There's the one camp of people that will say, you know, in today's day and age, in the age of TikTok and social media and everything, you have to be a musician, but you also have to be know business, and you have to know how to read a contract and be a videographer. And there's this big emphasis on growing all these different skills, because
Mm.
that's just what's needed now in this day and age, especially with the internet. And then the other camp is like, just focus on making the best music you can, and the rest will follow, and you'll attract the right people that have the complementary skills. And I oftentimes, as a producer myself, who's trying to grow my career and grow my audience and all those things. I find myself sometimes like wondering which is the right one, or maybe it's both. Maybe you just have to be like a dope producer and like have those skills. So I'm curious with you, just your thoughts on that and those two sort of camps of advice and how that sort of played out for you in your own
Yeah.
career.
Well, I'd say it's almost like one of the quick tips is that you shouldn't look at things like this false dichotomy of it's A or B. There's often
Mm,
a C. So with this, I would say it's about your stack of skill sets. So like instead of knowing everything, trying to be an all-arounder or just being specifically focused on one craft, which I do think it is important to like with music, start with one.
right.
But then to be valuable, you've got to have, let's say, three skills. So let's say you're focused on you do music, video, and you're funny and you have a sense of humor and you can integrate that or something. It's all about the combination, having a unique combination of a stack of skills
Mm,
that nobody else has. So I think it has to be unique to you because you've got 60,000 songs coming out on Spotify every day. Everybody is making banging dance music and everything on these. There's no shortage of incredible music, which is
yeah.
it sounds like it is a great thing, but it makes it harder. You can't just have great music. You've got to have a multi-dimensional brand that sticks in people's minds. Otherwise, you just sort of blend into this stream of content that's coming out every day. So
Right.
I don't know, it's something I struggle with is there's so many platforms. You can be spread very thin. Like we've done some stuff with TikTok where I had to do a video. They'd pay for a video and you'd have to do one every day for a month. And it was super
Oh, wow.
stressful. And
Right.
it was cool. Like it paid the bills for a little while, but it was like I did it for the quick tips and it was really awesome to do a development deal like that. But I don't know if I enjoyed that. And I want to spend more time. I think you have to do what is sustainable. So
Mm,
find a stack that's unique to you, and it has to be sustainable, or you'll burn out. And I talk to DJs that they tour for 2 years and they're like, "Oh, I'm retired. I'm done." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like,
right.
you haven't even started your career." And I see this all the time. They burn out in 2 years because they blow up. They get on some hot agency that has a lot of power. They get sort of they because they're on a good agency, they can get the leverage of that power of talent booking, and then the agency pushes them hard, and then it doesn't last.
Mm,
So the real answer is where how are you dividing your energy? And you can divide it very thinly. And if you do it very thinly, then it's not sustainable. So my biggest tip is you've got to build a volume of work. So you've got to find a process that allows you to build a lot of work to be prolific. Don't release everything. Don't be precious. So build a ton of work, um, and really utilize your unique skills that are good to you. And I think it's what is it? Rick Rubin says, you don't get credit for doing everything yourself. You don't get extra credit.
mm. Yeah, that's
So
powerful.
the I think the your ego will wants to do everything yourself. And that's something I kind of learned in the pandemic was well, out of necessity I had to learn everything myself because I couldn't have anybody come in the studio. I think one person came in here, one camera guy came in 1 year and we set up this crazy camera that spun around the studio and that was it. The only person I let in the studio. And then when we did these remote shoots, I had two people. So it was cool how to learn to do it with a very minimal crew, but you figure out what you love to do and figure out what you really hate and what you can't sustain and then you outsource that.
Mm. Yeah, and it's such a good tip coming from you because you are really like one of them, and at least in my mind, as like just as a fan. I mean, just an incredibly sustainable career with a ton of longevity. You've been doing this for 10 plus years and longer than that. And if I just think about all the different things that you're doing, like you produce, you DJ, you have two kids, you do the quick tips, which I'll link to that in the show notes. But it's an amazing resource for producers with all kinds of different tips on production and mentality and creativity. You take I know from experience from the way that we met was through my old job. And we did some brand stuff together with JBL, and I saw how seriously you took that, preparing your presentation. So, for you, when you talk about things being sustainable, um, was that like what was that process like over the years for you figuring out okay, these are the core 5, 6, 10 things, whatever it is, that I can see myself doing year after year after year. And these are the things that, maybe either I hate them or maybe they're cool, but like it's not something that I could see myself doing in the long term in a sustainable way. Was that like a trial and error process for you, like over the years? And if maybe if you want, if you could give some, maybe like an example or two of things that um weren't that for you, like that you're just like, nope, I just don't want to do this, like this is for someone else to do, this doesn't excite me.
I think for me, one of the hardest things is finishing tracks, and everybody struggles with that. But it's like after you've heard a song too many times, I'll have to give it out to final mastering and stem mixing, and I'll have somebody else do it. But it's funny because they don't always nail it too, and I'm like, well, I could do it better, and then your ego takes over again. You're like, fuck.
Yep.
So so
Yeah.
I try to get these projects as far as I can where it feels good, and then when it's not fun anymore, I like to bring in fresher ears, either younger ears like younger collaborators, or people who are just fresh because they haven't heard the song a million times, more experienced mastering engineers. So I think that is good. I've never done my own like release art.
Mm.
I've left that up to other people. That's a really tedious process when you're like searching for what encapsulates the album art. I don't love doing that. But I love making music. I love playing the shows. I love documenting the creative process and putting all those tips in one place. That's
Mm.
what that's why all the quick tips happened was I wrote everything down so I wouldn't forget it selfishly. And then it was like, well, why don't we share this with the world and make it into a book and make it a card deck? Um, but I think it's interesting. Like there's always the struggle of if you want to be out there doing it or you want to be teaching it. And like Kashmir has managed to juggle both, which I think is really
Yep.
cool. But you see like successful YouTube channels of guys that they're not touring and they don't really have an artist career, but they have great tutorials that are very valuable. So
Right.
it's like, do you want to be that guy? And I know guys that were professional DJs and all they do is just coach and mentor now, which is
Mm.
cool. I mean, that's great. I'm not going to knock that. But for me, everyone has their own little personal path, a personal journey. But for me, it's like, I have to make music. I don't feel well if I'm not making music or if I don't have a creative outlet, I'm not happy.
Mm.
So I can't farm it out. Like
Right.
I've worked with on every way you could split a collaboration from somebody else doing the majority of the work or for me doing everything, absolutely everything in the track. I've done it so many different ways and I can't like I can't phone it in.
Mm.
It's just doesn't work. And I've done the mix show myself and I farmed that out before and it's like and now it's like back to I had a service that was Noise House. These guys do incredible mix shows for Martin Garrix and Oliver Heldens. And you pick out the music and then they put the mix together and then you do their voiceovers. And we did that for a little while. And now with the pandemic, I put that on hold and I'm like, well, I really just want to do the mix live, do it myself. It's been
Yep.
so fun.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's an interesting balance of where, what do you want to spend your time doing? And
Yep.
when you have a kid, your time is absolutely compressed and you have way less time to do things. So it better be fun. And, sometimes it's not fun just catching up on social media and having to feel obligated to engage with every single person, but that's part of the job and it doesn't take that long. But I think I know, yeah, to get back to your question though, if I'm spending too much time on social media, I'm not happy. And
Yeah.
that time needs to be better spent creating work that will last, creating assets in the studio, creating copyrights, or out there on the road getting work done. So you have to feel like you're accomplishing something. And I think it's very easy to get into endless scrolling and compare and despair on social media.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's so much like gems, so many gems in there that you just said. And I think like, yeah, just the permission to let yourself focus on what's fun is so huge and is something that I really feel like I wish was more talked about. And that's why I'm so happy you're saying it because, even like the social media thing, right? Like there are kids out there who they love making content, right? And they just like, they love being on TikTok and engaging in the community. And that's genuinely fun for them. And like, and then you see people that can blow up having that kind of a career where it's like they're a content person. Then through that, maybe they start making music, and maybe that person who started as an Instagram star or YouTuber or whatever, maybe they are outsourcing like 90% of the music and it's like they have a ghost producer or whatever. And
Yeah.
that's because like they don't want to sit in front of Ableton and do that and actually go through that process because that's not where the joy is for them. And I think uh, one thing that I've been going through being in Tulum and really focusing on DJing and like kind of getting into that culture, because when I was down there were a lot of people who are mainly just DJs. Like they might have a release here or there on like an underground label, but you could tell like they're playing like 4 shows a week, and they're playing these parties, and especially in that kind of like Burning Man ish community where there's like a lot of these parties that are like in Mykonos and Tulum and things like that. There's a lot of people that their focus is really on the live aspect of it, the DJing, the event production, and things like that. And I think something that I've sort of been going through is just trying to differentiate between what is fun and also what am I doing just for my ego, that I because I think that I need to do it, or because other people are doing it, or because it looks cool on social media, but is actually like not that fun, you know? And it's like
Yeah.
if I actually check in with myself, it's like it's really not that fun. So I think just that permission to let yourself focus on things that are fun. And even last thing I'll say on that is you mentioned Kashmir. He was on the EDM prod podcast like a while ago, and I was listening to his episode. And I mean, I will say like that guy's like a beast. Like he's just doing so
Yeah.
many different things. I actually just saw him this past weekend at Brooklyn Mirage. His fan base is like crazy. They're just like obsessed with him. Like whole
Yeah.
production's amazing. But even he was talking about like he was like, I'm running a business. Like he's like, there's a ton of people like helping me. Like I'm not doing all of this, you know. And he actually said like the most important skill he's developed, more important than production or anything, is just learning who to hire and how to
Yeah.
manage people.
Yeah.
So yeah. So there's a lot there, but I think the piece about letting yourself have fun is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is funny with I feel like over the years, you have managers that come and go and being able to get the most out of your team. I don't know what the science is, how to do it, but I just know that you got to know how to communicate to your team what you like to do, what you don't like to do, and
Mm.
have them help you sort of manage your energy and your balance. Because the biggest, I think the hardest challenge is, every day I wake up and I have like a to-do list and I just am all like obsessed with lists and getting stuff done. But the mistake I make is I get stuck in the strategizing mode and the list mode. And it's really about taking action. Like stop talking about it, stop making mind maps and charting things out, and just go and do one thing, focus
Right.
on one thing in the studio, and that's the most important thing. You get the most done, and it sounds so basic, but just to be like, today I'm going to do this one song, I'm not going
Mm.
to focus on everything else, be able to get a workout in and work on one song,
Right.
and anything else, it'd be tough to get anything meaningful done
Right.
other than that.
And that's enough, right? Like that's totally enough. I feel like if you do that every day for 10 years, like you'll be golden. But it's like I feel like it's such an unsexy like day in a way. It's like, what, that's it? Like I want to
Yeah.
be in the studio for like 12 hours. And it's like I know for myself, every time I try to do that, I just burn out so quickly. Like it's
Yeah.
just I actually don't really know any like producers who actually do that day in and day out. If I can get like 3 hours in of focus time where my phone is off and the Wi-Fi's off, I feel happy.
I think that's all you need. I think there was a book I was reading where it was Daily Rituals, Mason Curry's book, where he was talking about how people in history, the best writers, they'll do 3 hours of concentrated creative work and then take the rest of the day off. Like they'll start in the morning when it's probably easiest because of your circadian rhythm and your brain is not even fully awake yet.
Right.
And then the rest of the day, do meetings, go on a walk, exercise, but you're not going to have like, it's a fallacy to think that you'll have 12 hours of just pure eureka moments. You probably might even undo some of your work if you're mixing, and you've
Yeah.
heard it,
Oh
you've heard
yeah.
it too many times. That's why I number every time I make a change to the song. I number it so I can go through A for backups and B so I can revert back to a version because I've probably screwed up the mix
Mm.
and added too many elements or put too many plugins on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've definitely been there too, man. Like, and it's funny um, yeah, just like trusting the decision, trusting what excited you at the beginning, and then just like remembering that that was exciting, and not like letting the fact that you've heard it 1,000 times make you less excited, and then you make changes and you listen back to that old version. You're like, oh, this was so good. Like, what the hell
Yeah.
did I do to this?
Well, and that's really key because the the drugs fade. You know, the your
Right.
goosebumps that you have from a track, which is usually the metric I try to get. It's a high metric. That
Yeah.
is there's no way that lasts after you hear it 500 times.
Right.
You won't get goosebumps in the 500. I mean, maybe if you let it incubate for a couple of years or something, or 6 months, you
Right.
come back, but just not how your brain works. Because your brain gets excited when it's surprised and there's novelty and there's familiarity and novelty coming together.
Mm,
So it's so funny. Yeah, you hear it too many times, and it's like, I mean, I have to get my songs remixed for my sets to keep them current, keep them exciting just for me to play them because I've
right.
heard them so many times. I can't imagine being a band and playing the same song
Yeah.
every set, you know?
Yeah, totally. I know you had a Gareth Emery remix just come out lately, which is really dope, by the way.
Yeah.
And speaking of like the novelty, I was going through some of the stuff that you put out this year, and you had one track that really stood out to me. I think and I don't know. I'm curious if you agree, but for me, it was like I could hear you in it. Like it had the Morgan Page, uh, like progressive elements to it in a way, more in a melodic way. The song was "When I'm Right," and
Oh, nice. Yeah.
yeah, and I was just like, this is dope. Like it had a novelty to it. Um, that I thought was really cool. So I don't know if you felt the same way about that track, but I think like you nailed it. Like just finding that combination of sticking to what makes you you, but then infusing enough novelty where it doesn't just start to get repetitive. Super
Yeah,
important.
and that was a cool track 'cause, Asia Whitaker, she sang on, she's on the track, and she did "Starving" with Zed and a bunch of others. She and we've done some work in the past, and she had this, like, almost country twang to it, so that's something I've been doing that's been fun, and on the track with Lights too that just came out on Tiesto's label. I put pedal steel guitar on that track, and then this one I played guitar. And the really cool thing lately in studios is like I go, well, I'm a producer. I can sing okay. I'm not a great singer. I'm a okay piano player. I'm a pretty bad guitar player. But you don't have to be like you make up this story about your identity saying like, well, I'm a singer, I'm a producer, and that's my destiny the rest of my life, which is total bullshit.
Yeah.
And I kind of went in and I go, well, okay, I can fumble around. I don't even know what key I'm playing in, or I don't even know what chords I'm playing, but I make enough mistakes and I find these little licks and it adds character to it because I'm not a great guitar player. And I
Mm,
can play it well enough. I can process it with Melodyne, and Calvin Harris does the same thing. He just chops it up and
yeah.
quantizes it because it's live instruments are hard, no doubt.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just interesting. You can look at yourself and be like, well, am I a guitar player? Am I a singer? Well, it doesn't matter. Like Post Malone made an entire career, and he said it himself, just singing with autotune on. That's the only thing he's good at. He said was singing with autotune, which is
Mm,
a skill in itself. It's not as simple as people think. Like, you don't just slap autotune on, and
right.
it
Yeah.
takes
And that's,
work and
yeah.
automation and but yeah, anyways, so with that track, a cool thing was it's been an interesting challenge to be like, let's put more instruments in there, just enough live instruments to give it a feel that sounds like me. Because the early records, like Longest Road, they had session players on them doing slide guitar, and then Lissy is not a dance singer, so the whole point, and I think the reason that worked was because I didn't go after a typical dance vocalist, and
Right.
I brought an outside sound and an outside artist into a dance music framework. So I think
Yeah.
that's where the exciting stuff happens when you're cross pollinating with a couple different genres, and that's why I think when I'm right is kind of cool because it's pop, but there's a little country twang to the way she delivers the vocal, and it's got my guitar playing on there, which adds just a random sort of organic element to it.
Yeah. And I think that whole process is only possible because you're not too tied to this identity that I have to be a producer only, or I have to produce only in this genre by these bounds, you know, like a progressive house genre that's, and everything has to be in the box or electronic. And I think yeah, it's just like these limiting beliefs that we can put on ourselves as artists are so, they can have such pernicious implications because we just, yeah, if you never even allow yourself to imagine what something could sound like, then you'll just box yourself into that. And I actually think that that's in some ways, um, I don't want to, it's not, I'm not, I don't want it to sound like there's some, I don't mean that there's like any conspiracy around this, but I do think like societally in many ways, like that is enforced just because what's the first thing that somebody asks you when they meet you is like, what do you do? And you have to learn to have an answer to that. And, you know, maybe the truth of that is like, oh, I spend 10,000 hours like learning how to get good at singing auto tune, but you just know me as Post Malone. You know, it's like, and
Yeah,
that's like kind of the process that I think a lot of artists go through. And I've also been experimenting because I grew up playing guitar and I kind of put it down for many years to get good at production. Um, and I've been playing guitar again and like literally just like relearning the Stairway to Heaven solo and like all these classic rock records that I used to love, and then trying to figure out how I can like put a little blues riff on some beat that I made or something like that. And it's just totally opens up the palette. And I actually think that what you said about combining already recognizable things that work is how so much great art is made. And that's how innovation happens, I think, especially
yeah.
with music. So,
You know what's weird is with the guitar stuff, at Hard Rock Hotel, you can borrow a guitar at the hotel, and they give you a little, headphone amp and a little pedal board to play with, which is really
oh,
cool.
amazing.
But it's weird, the guy when I remember every time I've borrowed a guitar, and I've done this when I stay at the Hard Rock, they always say, like, "Well, how many years have you played guitar?" I thought it was such a strange question.
Right.
Like, it's like there's this assumption that you're like a born guitar player, or you spent 10 years, so you must just love guitar, like, that you have to put this endless amount of labor into one instrument, which is
Mm,
it's like a very old way of thinking. I thought it
right.
was just it's like small talk they were asking, but I was like, that's so weird. Like, who cares how long I've played guitar? Like, I'm not a good guitar player, but it's just fun to mess around with it and
Yeah.
to use it to elevate your craft. But I think it is interesting, like back to an earlier question you had where it's like there are lanes and there are guardrails, and it is important to have these sort of get good in different areas. But maybe you're picking, as long as you stay on the freeway and don't get in the weeds, like pick like two or three lanes. You don't have to stay in your one lane your whole life with your
Mm,
music. But I see that happen. People say they just say, I'm a guitar player and I'm going to do this the rest of my life, and I'm going to be a virtuoso,
mm.
and then they never get any songs done or something. It's
Right.
so
Right.
interesting. Like this fallacy of you've got to master the instrument. Like, what is mastery?
Right.
How would
Right. Yeah.
like, when have you
Yeah, that's
mastered an
such a
instrument?
great question. Is it like you just once you hit the 10,000th hour, you get your mastery like certificate or something? Like I think that's that like thing you said about I'm going to be this great guitar virtuoso. I understand the fantasy because it's a very like in some ways it's like kind of narcissistic. It's a very like me based thing. Whereas I
Yeah,
would venture to guess that when you played that guitar in that song, you weren't doing that because like you wanted to like be good at guitar. Like you were doing that because you felt like that's what the song needed, or that would help the
yeah,
song. And like, yeah, I think mastery is an interesting term in art specifically because it's so subjective, and also because in my opinion like the point of art is to inspire some sort of emotion. It's not necessarily to be, you can't be the best, like I'm reading a book actually right
right.
now called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. He's a business
Oh
author,
yeah, yeah.
and the book is like changing my life. It's
Huh.
everybody on earth should read it, but it's basically he's talking
Write
about
it
how
down.
there's finite games and there's infinite games, and in finite games there are clear winners and losers. There's a time period. So like an example of a finite game is sports, right? Like in sports it's like one team wins the championship, there's one player who has the most points. It's like easy to see who's better than who.
Right.
But then he talks about in business and generally in life, and I would also say in art, you're playing an infinite game. There might be winners and losers in a time period, like in a quarter. If you reach your sales numbers, you might consider that a win. But ultimately, the game goes on forever, and he says that the goal should be to build a business that can survive in an infinite game, rather than a business that's short sighted. And again, the book is more so about business and building a business, but I think it so applies to music, and especially having longevity like you've had in your career, where it's not about like whether you get a hit record this year or you beat this person or whatever. It's just like, can I like sustainably do this on and on and on for years and years and years to come?
Yeah, I always say, you got to fall in love with the rewards, not the side effects of it. I mean, you got to fall in love with the process, not like the money that comes. But you got to love making music because it's all hard. It's all hard work. It's like choose your hard,
Right.
you know. But it is interesting, yeah. If you like with instruments, if you want to be a master at it, is that like playing 128th notes? Like, is it playing as fast as possible, or playing as on time as possible. Like, when have you won?
Right.
And to me, it's like it's important to kind of define that in your career. It's if you've won, I mean, winning in my type of career, it's selling out shows, it's having good streaming numbers, but it's like, but then again, you get into the details of like, let's say you're Post Malone level and you have a billion streams. That's not winning for him because a ton of other pop artists have had a billion streams.
Right.
You
Right.
know, Khalid just posted he has 7 billion streams, and you get one of those like silver bowls for every billion streams you get.
Right.
So is
Right.
that winning that you can,
Right.
eat cereal out of your Spotify dish that you get, like the trophy? Is that the end reward?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the reward is being able to do it to make a living and make a comfortable living from it.
Mm. Which is so subjective again, like it applies to
Yeah.
and I'm sure it changes throughout life. Like, I guess I'm curious, with you've been doing this as a career for years and years and years and years. Now you have a family. I would imagine does it have a different texture to it, like in terms of like what you consider like a comfortable living now versus when you were, maybe in your early 20s, for example.
It's funny when I think about how long I've done it, and it's absurd, and it's almost a little scary when you start to think about like, oh, I'm gonna need to pay for college, my kids' college with DJing money. Like I hope that can last, and I hope that work. I mean, that's so far off in the future, but it's crazy. It's like, how long do you do that for?
Mm,
Do you pivot and go into scoring, or so I try not to think about that too much because it's daunting. But
mm,
yeah, it's a crazy process. There is a different texture to it now where I feel like as a parent, I feel like I have a little more purpose in the world in terms of it's very clear what I need to spend most of my time on.
mm.
And not just music, it's like I've got two human beings to take care of that are super
Yeah.
needy, and it's way harder than I thought. Parents show you the curated highlight reel. It is way harder than a career in music, um, way harder than building a business. No one will tell you that, I think.
Mm,
Or if they tell you it, maybe it's people see it through their nieces and nephews and stuff. And you see like a taste of it, but
mm.
you don't know until you're in it. And I
Right.
love it. I love it. I like to be honest about it too, and I don't think a lot of people are. I don't think a lot of parents are honest. They're like, but it's such a crazy experience. I feel like but it's given me new importance for sure.
Mm. Talk about that. Like, can you elaborate on what you mean by the new importance? Is it, you know, just that all of a sudden now, like this career that you put so much into is like just obviously second to your children, or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it changes your priorities. And well, I always talk to my wife about how like if you don't have kids, well, you're just gonna go to like fancy dinners the rest of your life and travel. I mean, it sounds pretty good. It sounds good now, but like that gets old. It all gets old after a while, and it's really weird. You can take even if you have sold out tours, shows, amazing residencies, everything good you will take for granted at some point, which is weird.
mm,
I remember I had this residency at the Win and for 3 years, and it was so awesome, and it paid I was getting paid more than I should have been paid, and it was awesome. And there's all these incredible restaurants, and then after a while you kind of get used to that. You get bored, and it's like it's so weird. It's so weird to me because I love DJing. I would almost do it for free, but when it's good. When it's bad, it sucks. If the crowd's not with you, it's not fun. But
right.
when it's good, it's the best job in the world, and it's
Mm,
usually pretty good. But I think it's funny you habituate and you get used to anything.
yeah.
So you've got to give yourself a variety. You've got to keep challenging yourself. And if it's too easy, you'll get bored. Um, and I think that is the thing that happened in Vegas. It got a little too easy for some DJs,
Mm.
and everyone's fees got cut like in half if they were even asked to come back to residencies.
This it was
So
this you're talking about post COVID, or
Um, yeah, but pre-COVID, a lot
okay.
of the DJs were not asked back to residencies, or their fees were a third or a half of what they used to be.
Wow.
I remember Chainsmokers telling me that they're like, "Yeah, it's too easy for most guys." Like there
Wow.
was guys getting paid crazy money who didn't have big records, they weren't streaming much, they weren't selling tickets, and it was too easy for some of these guys. They just had a good agency or a good manager, and
Mm,
which is so funny. Now you got to do it all. You really got to have the songs that resonate. You got to sell tickets. You got to be engaged on social media and have a presence and top of mind awareness. be personable, and offer something valuable to people.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you still feel like, so of all those things that you just listed, right? Like the songs, the selling tickets, do you feel like, especially compared to, let's compare it to when you were starting out, do you still feel like the music is the root of all of it? Or do you feel like it is possible, and maybe there's examples, not that we have to name names, of people who like are just doing it on the strength of these other aspects? Or do you feel like, I'm just kind of putting myself in the shoes, I mean, I guess my own shoes, but the shoes of an aspiring producer DJ who's like, yeah, that's where I want to get to. I want to be playing these festivals and residencies. What do I focus on? Because there's just like a million pieces of advice and things, that I think I need to do. So
I think it's building original content. The music is the lifeblood of it, and like I always notice, if I'm touring and I'm playing a show and it feels stale, it's because I haven't changed enough of the music I play in my set,
mm,
and it's because I've gotten lazy and I haven't done enough new edits and mashups, and gone in and done cool stuff with tempo automation or effects, or like ways to keep the set fresh and different. And it's always like, oh, you got to do the work every day, and make it interesting, but it gets stale because you let it get stale.
mm,
So I think you've gotta you're able to have a sustainable career in music if you love the process of making music, because you're willing to put in those hours for the hard. Um, it's like weightlifting. Like I don't know how guys do that, how they can sustainably build muscle like you're super in shape. I don't know how everyone does like the amount of push-ups every day. For me, all that energy goes into the music and the business, but
mm,
it's like, God, there's a finite amount of bandwidth and energy each day, and mental grit, and
mm,
where you can direct that energy. So
right.
it's so tricky. But I think it has to fall back onto something you would do if you were sick. Let's say you had COVID, you had fever. What would you be able to do in a compromised state? And I would probably be able to do music. It wouldn't be very fun. I know Ingrosso had COVID. He had a fever for 3 months,
What? Three
which is
months?
insane. It's
That's
insane.
crazy. I never even
I
heard
mean,
about that.
that's like that's what he said. I mean, that's a pretty extreme case, but I think what would you do in a really stressful scenario of you're not, because you have to be able to show up every day, and it has
Right.
to, if it doesn't feel like work, obviously it's easier.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do you feel like, going back to being a parent? I mean, I would imagine that totally changes your day to day in a sense. And now you have this thing, your children. That's the most important thing. How do you feel like that's affected your creative workflow? Has it changed the way that you approach making music? Or maybe like having less time, or like needing to be more efficient in some ways, or even just your approach to creativity at all?
It's been really tough because you've got to be totally present, and then your kids know when you're multitasking,
Mm,
and they look at you and they get upset. Even the 4-month-old, she looks at me and she knows, like, I know you're scrolling through Instagram right now, like replying to people's DMs. Like, pay attention to me, look at me, like eye contact.
right,
So it's interesting because the video thing has been fun, where I've been able to learn the video stuff, keep an eye on them, and kind of be present and learn photography. But you can't do audio, you can't do studio stuff with
right,
kids around. It just doesn't work because they're so
right,
noisy.
right,
That is the biggest revelation, was holy shit, they are just constantly a constant soundtrack of noise. Not just crying, just every noise possible. So it's very very difficult to multitask that way.
right.
Um, but yeah, and you have to be laser focused with your energy. Um, but it really does cut. It just, the bottom line is you have less time, less creative time, which is
Mm,
unfortunate. But that is the sacrifice, and that is, I mean, my opinions are a little biased because of the pandemic, and it's been much more intense being a parent of the
mm,
pandemic. And I mean, thankfully, I have the 3-year-old is in school, preschool, so she's that's still good. But it's you basically have to find these other pockets of time. So I have a little chunk in the morning, I've got a little chunk in the afternoon to work out, and then I have a little post dinner night shift that I do.
nice.
Um, and that's it. And you only have so many hours in the day, and you can't. I used to stay up all night making music, and that routine went away a long time ago, like
Mm.
10 years ago. So now it's easier. It's better to get up early, work, do your best creative work in the morning, do a little at night rather than staying up till 2 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed that for myself too. I definitely think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about fantasies and things that we romanticize. And I definitely feel like the idea of like the artist at 4 in the morning is kind of a romanticized thing. I mean, I think Dead Mouse actually famously has talked about how like he like I don't know if he still does this, but I know that he said in previous interviews like there's this window at 4 in the morning when like you just get so creative. And I think that is like a fantasized thing, especially because if you are lucky enough to be able to do it and sustain it, then like you don't have to go to a job in the morning, so it's like you can do it. But I've
Right.
noticed for myself too, maybe it's something to do with the circadian rhythms or something, but if I can
Absolutely.
just get to bed, if I can just discipline myself to go to bed on time and wake up at 6, like I'm just flying through Ableton. It's like because
Yeah.
nobody's even awake. Like there's nothing. I don't have. There's no emails that I have to check or anything. And then it's like 9 a.m. I'm like I've already like finished my work. If I do nothing the rest of the day, like it was a good day because I just like got those
Yeah.
hours in.
If you can like
So
ignore your phone, like I always lapse on this, but if you can get up even an hour, shifting your day by an hour, you
yeah.
may finish a whole song you would have never done just by shifting your schedule to be up an hour earlier. And I'm not a morning person, never have been, but there's something about it. Like you start with that momentum and the rest of the day is much easier. But I was up late with the baby last night, so I started my day at 8:30 today. so so I know I'm already starting at a big disadvantage. That'll change the entire momentum of the day.
Mm, right.
But you would think it would be multiple hours, but even just a half hour or 1 hour shift in that start, and maybe not going into social media early in the day because that gets your brain wired in a whole different mode.
Dude, it's so 100%, and it's so addicting once you get into that habit. Like I'll just admit I'm currently in that habit, and I have been in phases in my life where I'm very disciplined about not checking social media, or I won't even have it on my phone. I'll just download it when I need to post stuff or whatever. But lately, I've been in that habit, and you're totally right, man. Like there's got to be some neuroscience research about like how it just puts you into this beta brainwave state, and then you're not able to deeply focus on things.
Yeah,
There's a
you're task switching, you're being reactive to like, oh, this person said this person commented on my profile, like fuck this guy. It's you're already
right,
there and you haven't even started your day.
right, yeah, you're already in that place, compromised place. Yeah, there's a great book. I think we might have even talked about this a while ago called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and
Yeah.
he just talks about the importance of he talks about how the most in demand skill in the next generation is going to be the ability to focus, like just to sit down and focus on one thing, because so few people can do it because we're all just being trained to have ADD by social media.
Yeah.
And I think especially with music, it's so important. I mean, sometimes I find myself, if when I'm really loving what I'm working on, I'll just like indulgently listen to it over and over again, like on a loop, instead of just being like, okay, what's the next thing I need to actually do though to like move this along,
And it's
so
scary because that's like a counter where if you hear it too many times, you're losing the opportunity to improve it
right.
more.
Right.
I mean, it's
Right.
tough though.
Right.
I always wonder, like when I road test stuff, I just pull up a Dropbox link, listen to it in the car, and okay, that's too many times. I've heard it 3 times. That's
Right.
enough. Because it's gonna get. I'm gonna hear that out on the road, and I'm gonna have to like finalize the mix. And then it sucks later on if you're like you regret any mix decisions you made. Once it's out, it's out, and
Yeah.
you got to be
Yeah.
happy with it. You got to make peace with it. You almost have to kind of like no work is ever finished. It just is abandoned, but you just
Right.
get it as far as you can.
Right. Yeah, Rick Rubin he has a great podcast as well, and he said something on there about he was talking to someone, and he was saying he never listens to his music outside of the studio. Anything that he's
Yeah,
working on is like forbidden from listening to it, because he's like, first of all, for exactly the reasons you said, he's going to get that familiarity with it that's going to affect his ability to make the right decision, but also just because it's it's there's nothing you can do, right? Like when
right.
you're on in the studio, there's nothing you can actually do to fix it. You're just like listening to it, taking notes. So
It's painful sometimes to listen to old stuff too, where like we're putting together a remix album for later this year of other people's remix of my work, and it's just like so painful to go listen to stuff that's 5 years old, 10 years old. You're like, all right, well, let's keep it more recent. You
right,
got to like
right,
like it's just one album, but it's like you can't go back and be nostalgic. I've never been a nostalgic person, just sort of, especially with your own product. Like you make it, you're happy with it, you move on, and it's all
Right.
about what are you working on now.
Right. I think the closest I've gotten to getting nostalgic is listening to an old track that is not that well produced and just being like, oh, that's cute. Like he was trying his
Yeah,
best back then. Yeah.
yeah, it can be encouraging,
Right.
to be like, wow, you come a long way.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
what kick drum were you using in that track? Like, couldn't you have
Right.
picked a better kick? Yeah,
Right. But there's something beautiful about that too. And I don't know if, yeah, I wonder if I'm curious if you've had this experience where, yeah, maybe you do have a track and you listen back and you, as the producer that you are today, can hear that and say, damn, I could do that a lot better. But then maybe that track was really popular or it did
yeah,
well. And, I think that's also like, it's interesting to keep that in mind, especially as dance artists or electronic artists, because the mix and the technical side of it is is so important in all music, but I think especially in electronic music. Um, just to remember sometimes that ultimately, like, the average listener is like not listening for that as
they're
much as
not like,
they're
wow, your
just
EQ work on that is
right.
meticulous.
Right. They just want to feel something. So
Yeah, I think the hardest part is that you get zoomed in and you're like polishing atoms, and that is, and you're comparing minute differences and bypassing plugins, and then it's like, whoa, 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 you got to step back, you got to zoom out, and be like, is this contributing to the song? Is this serving the song?
right.
And really kick the tires. That's what I have to do. There's so many songs I'm finishing right now. It's like, what's missing? Is there too much? And
Mm,
is it done?
yeah. Yeah, man, that's I think that's a good place to leave it for today. I do have a question that I ask every guest, so I'm going to ask you that now, and then at the end, if there's anything you want to promote, we can go over that. But the question is, what makes you feel the most free?
Most free. I think, I do a lot of trail running, and being outside totally alone is the most free,
Mm,
with no people, on the top of a mountain somewhere.
love that, man. I'm sure there's a lot of
Yeah.
opportunities where you live to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm still here.
Right, right. Amazing, man. Well, Morgan, thank you so much for taking the time. This was really a treat. And yeah, is there anything
Yeah.
you want to let the people know about? People should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, well, see, we're wrapping up the quick tips card deck is almost done. We're just finalizing the color palette. I got to send you the latest draft. So
Oh,
that
please.
is done. That's been a long project where I've whittled down the 850 tips down to 54.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's happening. There's going to be a remix album out later this year. There's a bunch of new singles. So the new one with Lights that we just signed to Tiesto's label. There's another single on Tiesto's label coming out later this year, but a lot of new originals on Armada. There's Lost, which Gareth Emery just remixed, and When I'm Right with Sick Individuals. So a lot of music that's been cooking for a while, and some stuff we had to hold on to during the pandemic. So lots coming out. We're scheduled out to the end of the year with that. Um, Working on some cool projects with Tesla as well that are top secret, but stay tuned for that.
Amazing. Not not surprised at all. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, yeah, but people should definitely check out the remote DJ sets that I've done. So if you type in Morgan Page Mormon Rocks or Verdugo's Mountains, we've done some really cool things with DJI and Black Magic, um, filming stuff on the top of mountaintops. And
I love it.
yeah, so
Amazing,
yeah,
man.
and anything else? Any people want to see tickets, more information, morgan-page.com, and on socials, I'm just at Morgan Page.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll link all that stuff in the show notes. And yeah, guys, definitely go check out the whole world that Morgan has created. He's obviously an amazing artist, OG, but also the quick tips is amazing for aspiring producers out there. And I think I did see the one of your outdoor sets, and it was really dope. So I'll link to that
Nice,
as well.
great,
Sweet. Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate the time, and we'll catch you soon.
yeah. All right, thanks.
Yep.